Mayor Wayne Brown, welcome to the Herald. Thank you for doing the interview. I wanted to start by asking you why you're standing again.
I want to finish the things that I started. I had those 5 policies, and the one that I'm most interested in is the AT thing, and I'm only just getting my hands on it. And so that's what I want, one more shot, lock that up. And also the behaviour, the culture of not wasting money is starting to take hold there. And I think 3 more years and they'll stop that, but I won't do any more after this, that's for sure.
Your deputy Desley Simpson was openly considering a run at the mayoralty, and then she and you announced together that she would stand as your deputy. You have a fixed Auckland ticket. And she said at the time, we have the same policies. So given that, why did you not step back and allow Desley Simpson to run for mayor this time?
I don't think you got that story quite right. She was actually actively contemplating resigning, and it was my supporters that talked her into staying on.
Okay, well, she hasn't said that.
No, but that's what happened.
Okay, right. So
I promised not to say much about that, and I gave her a period of time to make her mind up, but she's a good lady and compliments me quite well.
Do you think she would make a good mayor?
I think so.
You think so, but you weren't up for that this time?
Well, this time I was determined to finish the things that I started, and the AT one was kind of frustrating. It took me 3 years to...
It was said at the time of the last election that you had spent $500,000. Is that true?
Yeah, we actually spent more if you look up the thing, but it was $500,000 of mine. Of
yours?
And a bit more came in towards the end when people started to realise, oh, this guy's not quite an outsider he thought.
Did you have significant backers? Is that what you're saying?
Towards the end, people like to back a winner, and they kind of poured in right at the end. But most, I can't remember exactly, but we spent a lot of cash. Some of that money doesn't count because it started before. First part of that money I spent last time was 130 grand doing some research, because I wanted to know that the things that I wanted to fix were the things that Aucklanders wanted to fix.
Do you think spending that much money on a mayoral election is a barrier to entry for others? Do you think it intimidates other candidates contemplating standing?
Well, I don't know. I spent it because I came from right outside to a degree, and I think that was in keeping with what Mr. Goff had spent. If you look at the little form you get, I'm allowed to spend $712,000, which is a huge sum of money, really. But it is, in order to be the Mayor of Auckland, you have to be the most voted for person in New Zealand. And so, you end up getting more than 3 or 4 parties in Parliament get, which is bizarre, really.
You are attending very few Meet the Candidates meetings. Why is that?
Well, there's 2 reasons for that. We've had a really busy last flurry at the council just recently, and so to get things like the intensification through took a lot of side work to encourage everybody over the line. Plus, I went to 3 of them, I think, and sitting in a room with 10 or 12 people who've never even been a chairman of a committee, let alone run something bigger than a dairy, telling you that you're useless and have done nothing and you're corrupt. I was just thinking it was really unpleasant and informs nothing.
So in Whangaparao you did attend a candidates meeting, and while they were talking about accountability, you got up and said, oh, I'm off for a beer.
Well, at that stage I'd heard such a lot of drivel, and they talk about accountability. I meant to bring in about 3 inches of paper, which is this year's annual report from the council. And everything you need to know is in there. They just don't read it. And they make speeches about accountability. Even people around me in the council have not read that stuff, and I'm pretty sure you've formed that opinion as well. We are very accountable. There is no similar book from the government about the amount of money they've spent.
You are at the moment in the beginning stages of negotiating a regional deal with the government. What do you want from the government for Auckland?
Well, the most important thing is to respect Auckland for what it is, 1/3 of the country, and give us more ability to behave like we're a big grown-up, 1/3 of the country. And we have a very responsible way that we manage our finances, and that's something you couldn't accuse the government of. And the New Zealanders are in a bit of a funk at the moment, and I'm quite excited about the fact that Auckland's poised to have some really good stuff happening, and I think we're poised to lead the country out of that. But
So are you asking for things like GST on rates?
I haven't actually asked for anything that costs any money.
Okay.
The things that I wanted are just freeing up us to make better decisions without influence from people who just don't know a big city very well.
Transport is likely to be at the heart of that regional deal. You're on record saying that the government's key policy of roads of national significance is simply roads of national party significance. You've said that their plan for a new harbour crossing is the wrong one. You are upset that they are looking very slowly at congestion charging, which you regard as a key. Is there scope for much agreement with the government on transport?
Well, I think there's a lot of scope for agreement, really. I think Minister Bishop's a pretty pragmatic sort of fella, and he is surrounded by poor advisors in Wellington, to be quite I have dealt with the Ministry of Transport. It's straight out of a TV program, Yes Minister. What we're going to get from this is a transport plan for Auckland based on facts, based on where people are moving to, based on where industry is moving to, based on doing the right thing, not based on getting people re-elected in certain parts of the city. And the idea that we would have a cross-harbour study that's secret from the city that owns that surrounds the harbour is nuts.
And it is secret at the moment. You don't know what they're doing.
We know nothing.
Investigatively
we don't
drilling
even know
under
where
the
their
harbour.
office is. We don't know who the consultants are. It's bizarre. And when we looked at, I've been keen on making use of Meola Reef for a number of sensible reasons. And we found, one of my staff found, there was a 1965 report from the government just after it got underway with the harbour crossing that led to exactly the same conclusion.
So if the government is being secretive about its intentions and is not letting you in, what makes you say that you think you're going to get a decent deal from Minister Bishop?
They've got an election next year.
You think that's what it comes down to?
Mate, I'm driven by policies. The policy of National and Labor is let's get us back in, please. And I'm neutral to both of them. I can work with both sides. Even the other day, Councillor Ferry, who's quite hard left, said that I was the most centrist person she'd met. And I felt quite good about that.
You don't think that the government's roads of national significance, for example, is a vote winner?
Not everywhere. Just think about the harbour crossing. And, when the river cities of Paris and London and Rome and Moscow wanted to get from one side of the city to the other, they built a bridge. And when that bridge got full, they didn't build a tunnel under it. They didn't build a bridge next door. They went 5 k's along the road and river and built another bridge to open up new areas and create and reduce we don't seem to think about demand management on traffic. And that's one of the strong things for me. I've already got that with the port. It now costs a lot more to get your container off the port in the daytime than at night, and that's starting to make a difference. And that was in order to lead the people in Ministry of Transport to Wellington to understand it actually it works, The
policy and planning functions of Auckland Transport are coming back into Auckland Council, which is something you strongly pushed for. That's going to leave the local boards with quite some authority as road controlling authorities, able to make decisions in their areas. Do you think they're going to have the competence to do that?
Well, we're going to work out where that level is. It's not quite determined yet. But there's a lot of really small stuff that would be better made by the people of Howick than someone in
where the bus stop goes, that kind of thing.
Is there a yellow dot in front of the pub, or can they park there? There's an awful lot of anger over very small stuff. And in terms of you've got to understand that the 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th largest cities in New Zealand are suburbs of Auckland. And so they've got to have the ability. You can't say that everyone in Howick or North Shore is.
But my question really was whether you think the local boards are going to have the
I
skills to
think
be able to.
I want them to have those decisions because, in fact, at the moment, we're are mucking them up, and I get endless letters about trivia, and I don't want to be the person who makes that sort of decision.
Let's talk about housing density. There are lots of scary ideas out there at the moment. 2 million homes in Auckland, 15-storey apartment blocks, fewer character homes. Quite a number of the people who probably voted for you are worried about the new density plans.
A lot of the people who voted for me didn't quite understand that under MDRS they could have three ugly 3-storey buildings stuck 1 metre away on the boundary without any say whatsoever.
In any part of the city.
And so once they've, like I've had 2 or 3 meetings with groups that started off unfriendly, but once you explain exactly, and of course 1 or 2 of my councillors have been a bit disingenuous with raising issues that are not really true in order to sort of lift their chances of reappearing in the council. And so I think what I put a lot of work into getting through this last week and supporting. Richard Hills is a pretty good councillor, actually.
He's the chair of your planning committee.
He is the chair of my planning committee, and he kind of lives and breathes planning, and he does a good job of it. And I live and understand the practical sides of that rather than the theoretical sides. But the practical sides of that is that we just spent billions of dollars on an underground rail seat, and we're spending a lot of money on busways. I don't know why we took so long to do the busways, but we have. And we should be putting people around those. And that means in multi-storey. And again, I've lived in multi-storey apartments in Auckland for years. And so
that's the argument for concentrating the density on the inner suburbs. But a lot of people say, why not do it half an hour away in places like Henderson or Albany or Mangere?
Well, Mangere is full of densification, but at the 3 to 4 storey level. And Avondale, where you and I were yesterday, there was a whole lot of 3-storey stuff there, and there's lots of single.
And taller too.
Beg your pardon?
And
taller too.
Yes.
And some of them are really nice. And if you're worried about it, go and have a look at what Auckland Mayor do.
There are government ministers saying we should be looking at greenfields. Even the Prime Minister's saying that. What's your view of that?
Well, that's just economic nonsense, really.
So this is the outer edges of the urban limits.
So we have to build houses in Pukekohe so people can keep their seats in Epsom? That makes no sense to me.
Okay.
And you and I attended a very expensive and most impressive sewage system up north that really should have been done a cheaper version years ago, but unfortunately the growth got ahead of the ability to service it, and so it costs a lot to do that.
And the thing is that whilst
the companies, the Fletchers and others that buy farmlands and they put in the footpaths and the roads and the sewage system within it, but they don't allow. Inevitably, those people want a swimming pool and a library and a whole lot of other stuff which they don't pay for, and so now we're pushing up the costs of development contributions, and then they're saying, "Oh, we can't afford to do it now," and I'm saying, "Well, that's the point. We've got unused infrastructure right throughout the city. Let's make more use of it. More people in areas where we've got the stuff is a lot sensible." And I'm very pleased to argue that. And it may annoy 1 or 2 people, but when they understand it, they usually get it.
Okay. I have some quickfire questions for you. How well do you know your city? Who is Braxton Sorensen McGee?
Braxton Sorensen McGee. Oh, I don't know that person.
She is the 18-year-old star of the Black Ferns.
Oh, I should have known that, but I didn't.
And she's in the...
she's the little winger.
She is the little...
Oh, so I did know. Now,
there you go.
I was trying, because you said about the city, and I think, where does she go in the city? But I know her. She's pretty impressive, I've got to say.
Miles Hurrell?
Miles Hurrell is a good mate of mine who lives around the corner, and he is the person in charge of the one business in New Zealand that's bigger than the council.
Which is?
He's the boss of Fonterra.
Yes, exactly.
And he lives right next door to where I play tennis.
Who is Anapela Politahi-Avo?
Anapela Politahi-Avo.
Have you seen the movie Tina?
Oh,
you
is
have?
she the lady?
She's the lady,
okay.
Right. Who used to stand on top of the veranda of the farmer's building beckoning to children with his finger? Yeah.
Santa. That's a bit dodgy. I'm never too sure about that.
Who was Apihai Te Kawau?
Happy Hyde?
Apihai Te Kawau.
Not sure.
He was the paramount chief of Ngāti Whātua
Oh, I
Ōrākei,
should know that
who
too.
gifted Auckland to
Good man too.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for him.
What was the last show you were dragged to,
The
or
last
went willingly to? The last show, concert, movie, dance,
live show or movie?
A live show.
We went to the Murder on the Orient Express.
Okay, that was at the Auckland Theatre Company.
It was.
Right, indeed. Okay, what did you learn from the 2023 floods?
Lots. I wasn't particularly well prepared. The council wasn't particularly well prepared. Auckland Emergency Management wasn't well prepared. The city wasn't well prepared. And that was a major series of tasks to get on with. I've learned a lot. Auckland Emergency Management is a hell of a lot better than it was, including FENZ has also taken a step forward. What I'm most proud of that came out of that is Healthy Water's program of making space for water. And I think that's a marvellous thing, even if it does upset one or two golfers from Takapuna. But in the long term, it's a really good thing to do.
I was going to ask you later, but let's talk about that right now. Explain making space for water.
Well, making space for, the day after the flood, I took, at my expense, a helicopter up around over the city. And the first thing I noticed was the Devonport golf course was flooded, no houses around it were. And I'm thinking, well, that's a pretty good lesson. We have to, and as an engineer, you know overland flow paths are much more important than people think. The other things I learnt with a focus I've got as a long-term trustee of sea cleaners was the number of manholes and important pipes and things that were jammed up with plastic bottles and other stuff. So that's rubbish is part of the play in stormwater management. And I don't think the public understand that until they see it. That was disappointing.
So making space for water being the idea of creating reservoirs where water can be held and then seep away.
Creating overland flows,
yes,
and just removing houses that have got themselves on the road. The other thing I was surprised in the next few weeks when I went around picking up rubbish and carrying it and just learning is that people don't see water for what it is. And people had built solid wooden fences between neighbours they didn't like, which interrupted the flow and flooded their own houses in some case, or flooded the neighbours. Okay. So there was a lot of small stuff like that there that was, and so I pushed for a small booklet about that, which is we took around and handed everywhere.
Right. There's some other things that might have been learned from the 2023 floods. It came out recently that there were 3 hours of Friday night drinks in your office.
Well, there wasn't 3 hours, it was much less than that. And then once we heard about the thing, what was interesting that is that the first I heard about the flood was one of the people in the smokers part outside my one of my pubs in Otahu. And they rang and say, oh, there's water in here. No, the chief executive didn't ring us, nobody rang us. And the moment that we felt the thing is that we all stopped and concentrated and took advice.
But the city was, everybody by the end of the day on Friday knew the city was.
Well, no, in our office, we were looking out the window and there was no flooding in the windows in the city. Nobody rang me. They had the wrong Wayne Brown, of course.
The drinks in your office weren't included in Mike Bush's report. Do you know why that is? Did you ask him not to include that?
No, I didn't even speak to him during the whole thing. Hardly at all. He just quizzed me.
Did anyone from your office ask him not to include that?
No, I don't think that's true at all. He, if you read that long, boring report and go right to the bottom, there was a thing there saying that nobody had any alcohol impairment whatsoever.
Okay. One of the things that became clear was that in times of crisis, people want visible, empathetic, competent leadership. Do you feel that you served the city well enough on that occasion? Would you do it differently next time?
Yeah, I would. But I would expect to be informed a bit earlier. And my current CEO keeps me informed of all sorts of things. The Auckland Emergency Management have already sent me 3 texts today about what was going to be a bad storm and is not going to be a bad storm.
Is the city ready now for the next one?
Way more ready, but we've still got buildings in the wrong places. And up until Thursday, we didn't really have the power to actually stop buildings being built in the wrong places. I was quite critical about some of the...
but that's changed now from the Thursday decision.
But we had to battle through to do it.
Yes.
We had 5 councillors who voted against that. Can you believe that?
I just want to ask you about the style of the way things happen at council. People get called Trumpian a lot these days, and I've heard it said about you. Do you think you're Trumpian?
Well, not at all.
There have been accusations of bullying and misogyny around the council table.
But that wasn't aimed at me.
Not aimed at
No,
you?
not at all. I inherited a council that had some deep enmities across the way between parties.
In March last year, 5 women councillors formally complained that there was a boys' club operating at council. They talked about, in essence, a crude, jokey belligerence that belittles women. And you were the chair of that. You are the chair of the council meetings. You are in charge of them.
I wasn't really part of that, and they all actually have said it wasn't aimed at me anyhow.
So you don't accept the personal responsibility for that?
No, you ask people like Julie Ferrier, did she get a fair trot from me? And she hadn't beforehand because she was particularly left, and same with Angela Dalton. She's had issues with some of her male counterparts. Now some of the men are scared to say anything in case there's a reverberation. It's kind of like, it's quite a difficult job. There's 20 very different people in there, and they and I didn't really know them when I started.
So do you think you're good at forming a working team?
Well, interesting enough, everything that's been very difficult that I've needed to get 11 votes for, I've got 11 votes for. And I think one of the good things is that I've avoided us ever getting into the red versus the blue team stuff, because that prevents anything happening.
You'll be aware that this has been true of the Super City for its entire time. Both your predecessors did the same, got their majorities, worked across left and right to do it.
That shows what a difficult job it is. I mean, the Prime Minister has a cabinet of people who are there at his request.
And you
I've got people who are there at
hence my question, are you good at building a team? Because you have to build a team.
Well, I'm good at building 11 votes for things that are difficult. And last week's effort was, a very controversial thing, intensification. There was all sorts of people putting up a lot of noise against it. We got it well and truly passed. The airport shares was a very difficult thing, concept. I mean, it's been shown that the returns already millions ahead of what we would get if we kept onto that. And so it was incredibly sensible, and people who apparently had economic degrees opposed that, which is bizarre.
Could we talk about the long-term plan? That's the 10-year budget, which the government, or which the council will be refreshing, which it does every 3 years next year. What are the big issues for this coming long-term plan? The big difficult issues that council will face next year?
Keeping an eye out 10 years, encouraging everyone to think that way is a difficult thing, because everyone thinks about the next year straight away. And there was all sorts of people promising 0 rate rises next year, and we've said it's about 7%. And it's almost entirely to operate the city rail link trains. It's completely pointless building $6 million of underground trains, having nobody driving up and down the damn thing. And so in order to have it that low, we've virtually got no money for anything else increased. And so that's quite an achievement in some ways. And so
rates will go up next year.
Yeah,
because of that,
rate rises,
and then will come down. There are parts of the city that have had very high rates rises because their land values have risen, and particularly in the rural areas. Do you think the council has to review how rates are set to avoid that kind of blowout?
Oh, oddly enough, I went out to one of those areas and people said, it's just like it's a tax on our land. And I said, mate, how long have you been on the council and you didn't work that out? You should give back your money. It's always been a tax on my land. It was a tax on our grandfather's land. And the values jump about. And this last time, the rural areas hung on and rose a bit, and the city areas collapsed a bit. The city areas had more than their share of the increases in the previous ones. And so it kind of evens out in the long term.
Nevertheless, in the country areas, they have complained that was sprung on them, that the amount of the increase is enormous in many cases.
Well, I couldn't do anything about that.
I'm asking you if you think the rate setting system should be reviewed to avoid that level of increase.
I think there should be something about that, but it's not the rate setting system, it's the government valuation setting system, of which we have no control.
Well,
they have 3 years to work it out, and we're still late.
Okay, but valuation is based on the market. Market sets.
Yeah, but they could have it so it didn't jump around 5%, more than 5%. If you want to put a cap on that, and gradually do it. That would have eased that pressure. But
Okay, that's interesting.
I mean, the idea of a cap on rates is a simplistic idea to a complex problem, and people shouldn't trust simplistic ideas to complex problems.
You mentioned making space for water before. Is that going to put significant demands, new demands on the long-term plan?
No,
this 10-year budget? There's not enough money in there now to do what was initially planned.
Yeah, but it can't. This is a long-term plan, and these things actually take a while to do anyhow. And you start with the worst ones and work your way through to the less worst ones, and it might be something that goes on for 20 years.
More specifically, Healthy Waters produced a plan that I think said 18 areas they wanted to focus on. You're doing, what, 4 at the moment?
Yeah,
So-
but then the next year we'll start the next 4 and the next 4. And I
So
mean,
there
it's
will be
steady
money for
progress.
that?
And
Okay.
I'm a great supporter. The shock that the budget somehow or other withstood was the need to buy back houses, which came from the Labor government at the time making a generous offer to fund half of it, and then the Auckland Emergency Managing people coming up with a budget of the number of houses involved, which was grotesquely wrong. And we managed to survive paying for that and still work within our overall parameters of the budget. And that's pretty good going.
Around the campaign for council at the moment, there are always people complaining about the money council is spending on climate change. How do you think the city should tackle climate change?
Well, again, very complex problem, and there isn't a button somewhere that changes the climate back. And there are a lot of people, there are a lot of people around who, even in my council, who don't think there is a climate change. And so I keep pointing out, look at Kaitaia. They're having to change what they grow
You
there.
don't need to go out of Auckland to find evidence.
I realise, but sometimes you have to actually go somewhere else to show something that's underneath people's very eyes. And so I'm a great believer in freight moving off trucks and onto trains. That there is no downside to that. It makes a lot of belief. And the port weren't doing much of that, but now they're doing trains and trains every day. And they said, oh, we were subsidising. It was just a matter of getting the right pricing in here and there. And people's behaviour follows money, actually. And so if you can get the and financial incentives are correct. And it's interesting when you talk to the various people in the freight sector, the people who make their money just by moving freight, like main freight and those ones, are very happy about that. The people who own 4 or 5 trucks want their trucks to be kept using, and so they're not happy about it. So you have to come across, that's a good area for it. Keeping people living right next door to where they're working is probably the best way, because we're eliminating a whole lot of trips that don't need to be made.
So transport and housing policies are climate change policies too,
Absolutely,
is what you're saying.
I totally believe in
You
that.
made a speech to Grey Power in Northcote recently where you made those points.
I don't know how it went over with them, but I believe in that.
Right.
And
What do you think should happen in Queen Street?
well, it's again a complex problem. We've got people who are living in Queen Street, and I don't make the laws about behaviour. Unfortunately, that's a central government responsibility. But we've taken quite a bit of money out of the actual mayor's budget to put more council staff on the street. You can't arrest them, and you can't arrest a person for being poor, but we're kind of moving them along. And then of late, I've discovered that they charged a guy there who had a placard out trying to get people to use his way to have cheap use of public transport.
I'm really asking you a larger question about the economic life on Queen Street. How are those shops
Well, coming
to be
back to that
revitalised
thing, one
now?
of the things that they complain about is the rough sleepers. And so that is a problem. So I've got to work on that. And then I think I'm a bit patient. I want to see what happens once we've opened the City Rail Link. That should recharge things. It is complex to the extent that people are blaming AT for the shutting down of Smith & Co's, which my wife had heroically tried to keep alive. But people are buying a lot of things online now.
Yeah.
And their speciality was high quality brands, which have shifted down the model Queen Street. And so very hard. I've made sure they've got people who are retailers like Neville Finlow, who's a mate of mine who owns Zambezi, and they've got building owners on there so that they get both sides of it. I'm a great believer in strong, healthy business associations, because Queen Street's got real issues, but then again, so's the main street in Otahuhu. And local solutions are the best solutions to those.
We're nearly out of time. Can you tell me, what's the Auckland you would like your grandchildren to live in?
It is New Zealand's biggest city. It's got to be an international city in terms of its real say on the appeal offshore. It's starting to be a bit of that. I'd like to see the migration of the sort of buildings that are at the bottom of Queen Street up through the main street and connecting better to K Road. It's one of the things I'm proud of is starting the Tech Alliance, because we're not going to make the city richer by milking more cows. We don't have any. But we have a tech startup set up here which is lacking leadership. And so I've stepped into that space. The world in the future is the trade is more city to city than country to country. And we're seen as the only major city in New Zealand. So it'll be a bright, clean, more sustainable, attractive city that celebrates its harbour and its life and leads the economy as opposed to following it.
Do you think it would be fair to say that 3 years ago, when you were campaigning to become mayor for the first term, you were a pretty grumpy outsider complaining about a lot of things, but now you are the mayor of a city that is learning how to embrace density, learning how to embrace efficient transport, learning how to be a modern trading city, as you've just outlined. You've become a mayor of with an attitude to the place that's rather different than the one you had 3 years ago?
Well, I think the place is rather different than it was 3 years ago as well, and I feel good about that.
You think you've changed, is what I'm asking you?
Yeah, I think it's different. We have a port
So who
that
are
makes
you now?
money
Mm-hmm.
solely because I threatened to sell it. I wasn't never going to sell it, but I discovered that, in fact, my predecessor was working on that. I was worked out what they're going to pay and said, look, make that money. And then there are other little things that I love that set things. I'm intensely proud of little Brownie's pool, 200 grand.
And you're going to build more of those?
I'm going to build a lot more of those.
Wayne Brown, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon Wilson.